Now, Russia has been waging an overt war in Ukraine since its full-scale invasion in 2022. But the fighting in Ukraine is only part of Russia's wider war against Europe as a whole. This month's drone incursions on Poland and Romania and flying into Estonian airspace underscores Moscow's broader intent, dividing Europe and the US, weakening public support for strong military action and ending the continent's support for Ukraine. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were occupied and annexed by the Soviet Union in the 1940s and remained under their control until dissolution in 1991. And now what is happening is that in Poland, around 20 Russian drones entered the Polish airspace on September 10th. 3 were shot down. Romania, Russian drones crossed into Romanian territory in September, second week. Estonia, 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets violate Estonian airspace on September 19. Denmark and Norway, drones suspected to be Russians caused temporary airport closures in Copenhagen and Oslo. The Polish foreign minister issued a stark warning about Russia's ongoing hybrid tactic and the serious threat it poses to the European security.
I have only one request to the Russian government. If another missile or aircraft enters our space without permission, deliberately or by mistake, and gets shot down and the wreckage falls on NATO territory, please don't come here to whine about it. You have been warned. Thank you.
Now, the goal of this hybrid attack is to create fear, says the Danish Justice Minister.
Der har i går aftes og i nat været rapportering om droner over lufthavnene i Aalborg, Esbjerg og Sønderborg samt flyvestation Skrydstrup. Lufthavnen i Aalborg har været lukket i flere timer med betydelig forstyrrelse af lufttrafikken til følge.
No son aceptables las agresiones de Rusia en Ucrania ni las amenazas de Rusia en ningún lugar, ni de Europa ni del mundo. Creemos que es esencial reivindicar el derecho a que todos podamos desplazarnos y volar libremente por territorio europeo sin que haya, como hemos vivido esta misma mañana, interferencias por parte de todo el mundo, sabemos de quién, pero que en ningún caso van a quebrantar la voluntad de España ni de ninguno de los países de la Alianza Atlántica de seguir trabajando por la paz y conviviendo en paz.
Europe's President Zelensky also spoke on this issue.
None of this would have happened if Putin had not started this full-scale aggression, full-scale war. And every year that this war goes on, weapons become even more deadly. And only Russia deserves to be blamed for this. And for them, that challenge is far greater than climate change. Even being part of a long-standing military alliance doesn't automatically mean you are safe. Just recently, 19 simple Russian drones violated Polish airspace, and only 4 were shut down. Luckily, they were not shaheeds or even worse. Otherwise, the results would have been horrific. Estonia had to call a UN Security Council meeting for the first time in history because Russian fighter jets deliberately entered its airspace.
On this, I am joined by Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former Indian diplomat. Thank you so much, sir. And Fred Ware, senior journalist from Russia. Let me straight away go to Fred and then I'll come to Ambassador. Why has the incursions gone so much in the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia? Why has the pace increased of the hybrid warfare?
See, I'm not sure what is going on. I struggle to see how it's in Russia's interests to do this, and there are alternative explanations, including the fact that in Eastern Europe, there's a lot of effort to get unity, to get higher budgets, to get more resolve, to confront Russia, to help Ukraine, because the war is becoming more and more desperate for Ukraine. And in Ukraine, obviously, there's a huge incentive to find any pretext at all to try to drag NATO deeper into the war against Russia. So I take all this with a few grains of salt. I'm not saying the Russians aren't up to something. Those 19 drones that infiltrated Polish airspace, I mean, I can't see how that could have been an accident. Also, the MiG-31s that allegedly entered Estonian airspace, although you see no evidence is presented to prove that. It's declared. And therefore, I think we should maintain some healthy skepticism about it. We're in an escalating war of words right now. And the Russians have absolutely no reason to provoke NATO. It's not in their interests at all. And as we've seen in the past, as with the Nord Stream pipelines, Russians often get accused of doing things anyway, even though on the face of it, it's not in their interests at all to have done that.
Ambassador Dayal, can you please decode it for us? The sort of the reactions that have come from the Eastern European countries, and if it is true, and if I don't give benefit of doubt to Russians, sir, then why are they doing it?
I think the reactions speak for themselves because Russian hybrid warfare affects them all. Let me clarify that Russian hybrid warfare, as the previous panelists pointed out, refers to Russian efforts to foster instability in other countries using conventional and non-conventional means while avoiding an all-out war. Now, Russia continues to innovate its hybrid tactics to probe European weaknesses, as recent incidents indicate. You know, recently, as you mentioned, Russian drones reportedly breached Polish, Romanian, and Estonian airspace, and also reportedly disrupted airport operations in Norway and Denmark. So sabotage of critical infrastructure has been reported. And this includes, of course, the severing of undersea cables in the Baltic Sea. Now, both the EU and NATO have defined hybrid warfare as a priority threat. And they have said that they have developed strategies to address it. NATO has said that hybrid attacks could potentially trigger Article 5, which is the collective defense clause. Now, since 2024, NATO has increased intelligence sharing and revised its strategy to enhance resilience against hybrid threats, while the EU has adopted the Cyber Solidarity Act to improve threat to detection and response. So now, while Europe has implemented these extensive measures to counter Russia's hybrid warfare, its ability to respond remains fragmented and faces persistent challenges. Significant efforts, have been made, particularly since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. But the effectiveness of the response is limited by internal inconsistencies and Russia's evolving tactics. Now, let me mention that some experts whose comments I have read argue that European countries must adopt semi-wartime thinking to respond more quickly to evolving threats, especially in areas like drone technology. Now, Europe has the tools and a strong institutional framework through the EU and NATO to counter Russia's hybrid war. However, a fully effective, unified response is hampered by a lack of coordinated, cohesive implementation across all member states and by Russia's changing tactics.
Ambassador Dayal, is Russia still an empire at heart? I mean, so all these states were annexed in 1940s during the World War, during the World War II, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia.
Well, Mr. Ware would be able to answer that question better than me. But let me state that there are many sections of influential policymakers in Russia who still consider that it was a mistake as far as giving up these erstwhile republics of the Soviet Union. They all feel that they were part of the Russian Empire and somehow want to continue extending their influence there. Now, of course, the EU realizes it. In October 2024, that is last year in October, the EU established a new framework for targeted restrictive measures against those responsible for Russian destabilizing activities. So the ongoing theater of, covert warfare, you call it, or some kind of restrictive activity continues. And I think that the action will continue to be witnessed in this regard. Of course, sanctions have targeted specific individuals, such as the GRU agents and propagandists who are reportedly responsible for spreading disinformation. However, the economic impact of all these measures is mixed, and Russia has adopted a wartime economy and pivoted to non-sanctioning trade partners to absorb the pressure. So I think that we will continue to see a lot of activity in this context.
Fred, the same question to you. Do you think that Russia is still an empire at heart? Because all of them were part of the Warsaw Pact.
I don't think you find a single significant political force in Russia that hasn't accepted that the Baltic states, the Eastern European former Warsaw Pact countries are gone, that they are now firmly entrenched in NATO and the European Union. It was about Ukraine, where they drew a red line as Russia rebounded from the 1990s, became stronger. And under Putin, it seems to me that the policy toward the near abroad is not old-fashioned imperialism, that is, we want to restore the Soviet Union or the Russian Empire, but rather more neo-colonial towards countries like Ukraine and countries of Central Asia. That is, they are independent, we accept their sovereignty, their territorial integrity up to a point, but they must remain within our sphere of influence, open to capital flows, open to political pressure. It's more like France in Africa, or a late 20th century neo-imperialism. But yes, they are covetous, and when it comes to Ukraine, as you see, they are willing to go to war, a long, hard war, to prevent it from becoming part of the Western sphere.